Anam, let's turn to you. And it would be great if you could, I know a lot of us have interest in education, हम सब काफ़ी statistics भी जानते हैं, लेकिन आप क्योंकि practitioner हैं, you've been working in this field for so long, ज़रा हमें कुछ inequalities के बारे में बताइए कि किस तरह से education access जो है वो constrained है, and it would be really great कि अगर आप लड़कियों के बारे में ज़रा हमें और बताएं.
And the reason for that is threefold, right? उससे क्या impact हो रहा है is the fact सबसे पहले कि schools नहीं हैं. There are not enough schools to fill these 28 million children, and सबसे ज़्यादा disproportionately women are getting affected. So हर एक primary school अगर 3 boys के schools हैं तो 1 girls का school है. And this disproportionately as the higher they go up ऐसे होता है. So 9 boys school तो 1 girls school. So the girls are at a disadvantage from the get-go. दूसरी चीज़ है 28 million children लड़का या लड़की you need an army of teachers to educate these students. उसमें अगर आप बहुत रिसोर्स भी लगा लें तो आपको दो डेकेड्स लगेंगे टू क्रिएट दीज टीचर्स इन ऑर्डर टू टीच दिस ह्यूज नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स. एंड तीसरी चीज़ इज़ विच डिसप्रोपोर्शनली इफेक्ट्स वुमेन इज़ कल्चरल नॉर्म्स. सो जैसे ही बच्ची बड़ी होती है देयर इज़ द प्रायोरिटी दैट ये घर के काम कर सकती है, इसको डोमेस्टिक हेल्प के मदर की हेल्प कर सकती है, बच्चों की छोटे बच्चों की हेल्प कर सकती है. सेकेंड, पेरेंट्स स्पेशली इन रूरल कम्युनिटीज़ आर अनकम्फर्टेबल सेंडिंग गर्ल्स टू स्कूल पोस्ट प्यूबर्टी. So ये हमारा एक cultural context है and we need indigenous solutions to talk about what Dr. Mariam was just talking about कि हम पाकिस्तान के context में रहकर we have to create solutions that are catering to our environment, to our particular constraints. So for me, I think कि जो brick and mortar वाला model है, जो आप schools बनाएं और इतने ज़्यादा teachers को train करें और लेकर आएं, this is not going to work for our country. We really have to understand that we have to leapfrog traditional constraints that come in through these traditional ways. बहुत सारे teachers जो already in school में होते हैं, especially in rural communities, don't really have the experience or the training to be teaching these students. So through tech, you can leverage the best teachers and you can do a one-to-many model to get to many students and help increase in exam performance. And that's something that's documented on EdCasa's app, that students who use it tend to do a lot better in exam performance than students who have not been using it. अब तीसरी चीज़ आती है cultural constraints की. So again, technology जो जहाँ पे बच्ची जा नहीं सकती school जो मीलों दूर है, she can still use tech closer to her house. So इसमें one of the solutions that we've designed is what we call the connected classrooms. So what we do is जैसे factories हैं, आपके पास infrastructure बहुत है, factories हैं, community centers हैं, we go to them and we equip them, we give them an entire classroom model, उनको हम projector और internet connectivity वगैरह provide करते हैं, जिसमें हम less than $1 per child per month में उनको service कर सकते हैं K-12 education को. So as far as I'm concerned, I think what we are heading towards and the challenges that also brings, because digital safety and security is a huge issue then. How are we catering to that? But for me, I think the question is no more कि tech की adoption होगी in education. I think already हो गई है. But how are we managing it? How are we safeguarding the interest and the rights and the protection of our students? That's an area that needs a lot more work.
So Shumaila, let's come to you. And could you build on what Dr. Mariam has said, what Anam has also talked about, कि I think जो मरियम बात कर रही थी उससे हमें ज़रा अंदाज़ा हुआ है कि घर के अंदर किस किस्म के मसाइल हैं when it comes to using technology. And what I'd like to get a better sense of from you is कि जब आप economic purposes के लिए टेक्नोलॉजी को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान में, जैसे अनम ने भी कहा कि टेक्नोलॉजी इस्तेमाल हो रही है and not just for connections but for the labor market, for getting education. तो इसमें मसाइल क्या हैं? क्या इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर लेवल पे कुछ मसाइल हैं? घर के मसाइल तो हमें थोड़ा बहुत अंदाज़ा हुआ है. Is it education? Is it lack of money? Is it some broader infrastructure issues?
So just taking a step back, we talk about the gender gap and gender divide. It translates in many forms that we don't even think about. And one of them is the digital transformation and the digital uptake and the gender divide over there. Ab gender gap index and reports ko dekhein, Pakistan is the lowest performing country. उसके different dimensions हैं, health है, education है, economic opportunities हैं, political empowerment है, and in all those areas we perform poorly, and that's also translating in other areas. There's very interesting research, there's social aspects, and there's also stabilization aspects of an economy and a country, which we've also experienced. So that linkage is very important. Now, in terms of utilization, the first manifestation of this gap is when you have very low levels of education, low levels of health in a country, the uptake and to be able to benefit from digital technology is also low, and the level at which you can interact with these systems is very low. So that's one. Then another thing is access to technology. So the most common and easiest way is through mobile phones. So it's been touched upon earlier that the access is low. 50% women have mobile phones, only 20% have smartphones, and only 27% have access to internet. So how will they engage with this technology, be it financial inclusion, be it e-commerce, education, health? So by not investing in this infrastructure, we've really limited ourselves in the way we can engage with this system. So we have to create access to these technology, make it cost effective, make it cheaper. But एक जब digital divide आ जाता है, वो आपकी society को have-nots में इतना divide कर देता है कि फिर आप उसको cover नहीं कर सकते. Access to finance, financial inclusion की बहुत बात होती है for economic activity. इसमें financial inclusion होगी कैसे? जब आपके पास वो systems, वो infrastructure कहने को तो है, but वो इतना effective नहीं है. So for women to be able to access these financial inclusion platforms, they should be able to afford this technology. It should be available to it. Cultural norms discuss हो चुके हैं. Then another very important factor is economic opportunities. जो उसका तो gap बहुत ही ज़्यादा है. We're the lowest over there. वहाँ पे अगर आप अपना economic mix देखें कि what kind of economic activity are women engaged in, it's low value economic activity. तो फिर आप उनको लो वैल्यू इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी में वो इस किस्म की टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ इंगेज करने की उनको ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती क्योंकि वो कैश बेस्ड एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं. You elevate the level of their economic activity and the level of their economic engagement, they will be able to use this technology much better. Some of it is happening. For instance, e-commerce platforms को आप देखें, you see rural women, they're crossing out the middleman and they're reaching the urban market and they're getting a much better price. That's happening. But at what scale? It's very limited. Very few women who have the access, who have the confidence are doing it. Most cannot do it.
Do you think there's an appetite in the public sector, in the government, कि इन linkages को mend करें, build करें? And it would be good for you to think about this or tell us about this from an education perspective. So, जो आप leveraging technology की बात कर रही हैं in order to solve our education crisis, क्या public sector में इसकी appetite है?
Hadia, just before I get to the public sector question, I want to just build on something that Ms. Shamaila said. So, आप लोग अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं, like 2 साल पहले there was a lot of funding coming into Pakistan startups के अंदर, right? Like, and you saw airlifts and whatnot raising millions and millions of dollars. अब आप guess करें उसमें से कितनी startups थी that were backed by women, percentage wise? How many people think it was less than? Does one person thinks that less than 10% were women? How many people think it was more than 10%? That the funding that was okay. Most people think it was more than 10%. The actual number is 2%. So 2% of the women actually received that huge barricade of funding that the startups got. So at CASA, which is my company, was one of those very few companies jinko female founders were part of it and got investment. So absolutely, broken linkages and access to financing is very limited. Women need to come on, at the leadership positions and design for women as well.
सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल दबाएं ताकि कोई खबर रह न जाए.